Has the South African Police Service been captured by criminal elements? KwaZulu-Natal's Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi thinks so, alleging that Minister Senzo Mchunu has ties to the underworld and has politically interfered in certain key investigations, with an ulterior motive to disband a critical team tasked with probing political killings.
He basically said that the uppermost ranks of the police, including the police minister himself, seem to have been bought and paid for by nefarious actors in the underworld, including one Vusimuzi Cat Matlala. We know Mkhwanazi has put a target on his back, and this really just speaks to the factional nature of policing in South Africa and how politics has become intertwined with that.
We wade through murky waters with star investigative journalist Jeff Wicks next. Later in the show, Minister Mchunu insists the Hawks have an 80% state capture corruption case conviction rate. And finally, roadblock laws are very clear. No traffic cop may keep your license for not paying a fine on the spot.
To know when the next episode drops, hit the like, follow, and subscribe buttons on our YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast channels.
If you'd like to engage us on this episode's topics, you can send us your thoughts and opinions to the official Lead WhatsApp line. That number is 072 562 3179. My name's Graham Robenheimer. Well, let's chat all this and more right here on The Lead on News 24. Well, some might say the gloves are off. In a startling Sunday press conference, KwaZulu-Natal's Provincial Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi publicly claimed that the heart of the South African Police Service has been captured. Mkhwanazi alleges that Minister Senzo Mchunu, Deputy National Commissioner Shadrack Sibiya, as well as an associate known as Brown Mohotsi, have all played a part in politically interfering in the SAPS. This is apparently with the goal of disbanding a key policing unit, the Political Killings Task Team. And a name that prominently features throughout is Tender Don Vusimuzi Cat Matlala, whose alleged dodgy dealings have, of course, been exposed by the News 24 investigations team. Well, the dogged journalist charged with piecing all of this together over the last couple of months is my learned colleague, Jeff Wicks. He's live on the line now from Johannesburg. Jeff, a very good Monday to you. I hope you're doing well.
Yes, thank you, Graham, for having me.
Fantastic. Look, I think context is going to be key here as we sort of try and piece together this very elaborate puzzle as it stands. Let's begin, please, with the Mkhwanazi allegations from Sunday. Sum them up for us best to our understanding, because I haven't seen something as brazen as that press conference in the longest time. Quite massive revelations coming out.
Absolutely. I don't think the significance of that seismic Sunday press briefing can be understated. What we saw was a provincial police commissioner essentially breaking rank and openly declaring that he is investigating his political principal, Police Minister Senzo Mchunu. He didn't pull any punches, and it's the kind of tone and tenor we've come to expect from Mkhwanazi there in KwaZulu-Natal, where he basically said that the uppermost ranks of the police, including the police minister himself, seem to have been bought and paid for by nefarious actors in the underworld, including one Vusimuzi Cat Matlala, and were disbanding the Political Killings Task Team for an ulterior purpose. That is kind of Mkhwanazi's message distilled. However, understanding all of it is far more complex when you're trying to go into the nuance of everything.
And that's what we're about to attempt to do. And correct me as we go along. Of course, I've been spectating, looking closer to investigations and trying to piece it together all on the side. And it's been nothing short of fascinating to see it all come together. At the center of Mkhwanazi's claims, essentially, Jeff, is this removal of the Political Killings Task Team or unit. Their work, as we understand it, it's quite critical to cracking these very sort of background cases that need an awful lot of attention. And of course, anything to do with political interference is going to be incredibly dark. What exactly is the provincial commissioner alleging about this unit?
So I think we need to understand that the Political Killings Task Team was formed in 2018. We know that the political landscape in South Africa is fraught, and the formation of that task team came on the back of the Morane Commission of Inquiry into political killings. So it definitely had a basis and it had a very noble intention, but it courted controversy just because of the way it was run. There were issues around its reporting structure because it seemed to be seated within crime intelligence, and there was also a direct reporting line to then Police Minister Bheki Cele, which, makes people a bit uncomfortable when it talks about political meddling and political steering or interference. Now, that said, what Mkhwanazi attempted to do yesterday was to paint a picture of a successful and necessary unit, which is not untrue, but it has also been criticized in the past. But the hinge point for us is that elements of this Political Killings Task Team were dispatched to assist with 2 investigations in Johannesburg, and Mkhwanazi says that basically set about the demise of this Political Killings Task Team. And distilled, his press conference says that nefarious actors pulled on political strings because they were facing the heat from these 2 murder investigations, and that the Political Killings Task Team is now collateral damage. And what it speaks to is, elements of capture within the SAPS that we can't not take notice of.
Jeff, you took me by complete surprise in today's latest offering from your desk, Tender King Kat Matlala and Senzo Mqunu linked to protection bribe scandal, because you bring in so expertly, and I thought obviously this was going to be the case, but the murder of Vereniging engineer Armand Swart is linked to that story of the Transnet deal that was, the value of which was ballooning so exponentially, and here's this engineer who gets shot and killed in what's understood to be a case of sort of mistaken identity. He wasn't meant to be the target of a hit. You bring in the fact that this sort of unit or task team, the end of its sort of cycle, or Mkhwanazi says it's still together to this day, but the sort of beginning of the end for it was this investigation into this engineer. How so?
Well, I mean, we've been following the murder of Armand Swart since the day he was gunned down on the 17th of April last year. And, it just by happenstance, it's become the genesis of this entire scandal. Mkhwanazi says that...
It's remarkable.
He dispatched his or elements of the Political Killings Task Team to go and assist members of the organized crime unit in Gauteng investigate this murder. And I mean, to their credit, they seem to have done a pretty rock solid job in that they have picked up links to a spate of killings across the province that, features prominent artists, politicians, and taxi bosses, but also most prominently the attempted murder of Tebogo Tobejane, who was Kat Matlala's former lover. So the investigation into the murder of Swart is key. We know that the investigation team had been doing hard yards when they first started work on that. There was a 1 million rand bounty on the investigating officer's head, and they kind of lived under protection 24/7. So that was the entry point for the Political Killings Task Team, and their work took them wider. Where they eventually settled was on our man Kat Matlala. And it seems, according to Mkhwanazi, that the combination of their involvement in those 2 cases could potentially be the death knell for this team of cops, which he says is doing important work.
Because, and Jeff, help me out here, the same suspects that have been named, they've appeared in court for the Swart murder, are the same names that are popping up for the attempted hit on actress Tebogo Tobejane, correct? Which is what essentially led to the Tender Don's arrest.
Yeah, so it can be explained like this. When Swart was killed, the cops acted quickly and they managed to arrest 3 men they allege are the hitmen in this matter. It's a policeman and two people they refer to as career criminals. Those 2 career criminals were linked on ballistic evidence in that the same guns that were used to kill Swart were also used in the attempted hit on Tobejane. So that's the common thread, and the common thread comes from the hitmen themselves. So that's how the ballistic analysis took this team from Vereniging to reopen this cold case of Tobejane, which had essentially been forgotten for 2 years.
You're listening to the latest edition of The Lead on News 24 with Graham Rowenheimer. If you've got an opinion on what you've heard so far, drop us a short voice note on our WhatsApp hotline. That's 072 562 3179.
Okay, so there are the links now coming to the fore. Then Mkonazi comes out, the Provincial Police Commissioner in KwaZulu-Natal, and in that startling press conference, he comes out and he goes, here's this key communications that have now sort of been leaked to the media. You've published them today between Matlala, the minister, and this associate by the name of Brown Mahotsi. They've all come to the fore now. What do these key communications now reveal with all of this context in mind, Jeff?
So obviously the police's focus was initially on Vereeniging. That investigation took them to Matlala and Tobejane, and then when Matlala was eventually arrested, they seized his cell phone and analyzed it. And all the messages, the receipts, so to say, that Mkonazi pushed into the public domain yesterday come from that device. And essentially, and we must understand also, we're only seeing portions of messages and select messages, but definitely the sort of the distilled message that we draw from what we were provided with was that Matlala understood that the disbanding of the political killings task team would be beneficial for him because they were the ones who were leading his case. At the same time, it seems that he was trying to exert some sort of political influence to save his tender, which by that point was already on the skids and was, the SAPS were making threats about cancelling it. That's a 360 million rand revenue stream he would obviously want to protect. So it seems as if Matlala was at the center of this plot, so to say, to influence the shape and structure of the police for his own ends and nefarious ends, it is claimed.
And I thought, let's just have a quick closer look at those particular alleged WhatsApp messages. On 1st of January 2025, this associate that we've named, Brown Mahotsi, says, quote unquote, I've arranged a meeting for Sibia, which we now understand as the Deputy National Police Commissioner Shadrack, and thus the Minister as well, Minister Nkunu, that they must have a solution, quote unquote. And the quote continues, the task team that came to your house and harassed you has been dissolved. They got the letter on Monday. As we speak, they're bringing all the dockets to Sibia. What does the money trail reveal to you? Because I thought that was also so excellently weaved together, Jeff, is that you show that the money that probably what Matlala got from that now cancelled, very controversial SAPS health services tender, he then presumably used some of those funds to pay off Mahotsi. Is that right?
Well, we know that the payment to Mahotsi came from the Medicare 24 Tshwane district bank account. That's the vehicle through which he scored the tender. So it stands to reason that it's likely the SAPS that ended up paying for the political influence to disband the political killings task team, if any of this can actually be verified. But the money, or the proof of payment which was sent from Matlala to Mahotsi, seems to me to be the quid pro quo for all of the influence that he was supposedly wielding with the minister. That said, it's important that Senzo Mqunu comes out and tells us exactly the nature of his relationship with this Brown Mahotsi, because there's disparate narratives on exactly, does he know this man? Do they have a relationship, or does he not? And I think that's going to be important for the minister going forward, because there's no indication of direct communication with Matlala, and there's also no indication that the money that was paid to Mahotsi ever made its way to Senzo Mqunu, which I think is important.
On that note, we have the clip that is doing fairly well, picking up streams on the News 24 YouTube stream at the moment, Jeff, of Minister Nkunu responding to the Provincial Police Commissioner's Sunday bombshells. Let's have a listen to that clip.
Well, we have become aware of what General Mkonazi said, we have been saying. I didn't have time to look at TV, but there are those statements that he has made. We will, in good time, apply our mind to those kind of statements.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like an awful lot there. It looks as if this all sort of has to head to some sort of official investigation. And some people were asking, why didn't the commissioner just take all of this to Parliament?
Yeah, I think this is the starting point of a scandal which we're going to see play out over several weeks, because it really does strike to the heart of the probity of the South African police force and the men and women who run it. We've been told by now a high-ranking official that the entire top structure of SAPS is captured. And we're going to see, seismic movements in the way the organization is restructured. And it's also going to be very interesting to see how President Cyril Ramaphosa deals with this. We know from his statement that he said this is a grave national security concern. He's very much correct in that. But it's going to require some sort of action from him. And he remains in Brazil, but we're told that when he gets back, it'll be on the top of his list. We know how fast he usually moves with these things, and we think that this is there's a national security imperative that's going to demand a certain level of haste.
There have been suggestions in the meantime, Jeff, that Mkhwanazi perhaps has his own machinations or skin in the game, if you will, here. He's insisted that the political killings task team remains functional to this day, still doing its work. Your views on the sort of direction he's taken everything, putting it so publicly?
I mean, it's certainly unprecedented to take something like this and push it into the public domain. Some might consider it a strategic masterstroke, because any move on him now will be met with a certain level of opposition, because in a way he's robed himself as a whistleblower. It's too early in this game to tell exactly what the ramifications will be. That being said, we know Mkhwanazi has put a target on his back, and this really just speaks to the factional nature of policing in South Africa and how politics has become intertwined with that.
And what does this all say to you about the state of policing just in general? We're obviously not new to police scandals. It's been a sort of part of South Africa's democratic story since 1994, and obviously before that. And there's many cases to point to. But what do you, Jeff? You so often see, how the police go about their business in different cases, especially in Gauteng. What does this say to you as a very senior journalist, looking at all of this from a distance?
No, I think I can answer that question from the perspective of being a South African citizen. People are sick and tired of crime. We've got a scenario where in the last 2 years, the murder rate in South Africa reached the highest point in 2 decades. You ask anyone in the street if they've been a victim of crime, most often they're going to tell you yes. And people have become so inured to this that we've become accustomed to sort of accepting the mediocre, and unfortunately, that's not a status quo that continues. The police released a statement this morning saying, operational procedures will happen as normal. This is not a normal day. If I was a policeman putting on my uniform this morning, I would be doing so with a certain amount of uncertainty, because, you've got an immense destabilization force now, because we've got factions at the uppermost level of the police fighting, and that will naturally impact operations going forward, even from a morale perspective, which can't be understated. I think things are going to get worse before they get better, and that's what people need to gird themselves for.
Jeff, just to end off, final question, what is the big question mark as we stand today, this Monday, in terms of the web that we've just put together so far? Obviously, many outstanding avenues here to look into, but what's the first thing that you feel like, hey, we need to really investigate this further?
I think the point of focus for me is the figure Mogotsi. He was sort of positioned as an intermediary or proxy and go-between between Matlala and the minister, and I think the minister needs to take the nation into his confidence and explain exactly what his relationship with Oprah Brown Mogotsi is, if one such exists.
And that's Jeff Wicks, a specialist investigative journalist with the News 24 Investigations team. His latest piece in the fantastic 9 Live series, Tender King, Kat Matlala and Senzo Mchunu linked to protection bribe scandal, is still trending with that news from the Sunday press conference in tow. Jeff, thanks so much. I really do appreciate it. And I can't wait to see how this thing's going to unfold next.
Thanks, Graham. Thanks for having me.
Shifting now to our trending topic, and we're staying with policing matters. Whilst Minister Senzo Mchunu deals with KZN Commissioner Mkhwanazi's claims, he also insists the Hawks have achieved a high conviction rate in their investigations into state capture cases. Last month, the Hawks revealed to Parliament's Scopa Committee that officers had been handling some 35 cases related to state capture corruption, of which 4 have since resulted in convictions. MPs also heard the Hawks had been operating operating with major staff capacity issues. Then, Action SA MP Daryline James sent a written parliamentary question to Mchunu demanding to know why the low figure and if any Hawks official had fallen foul of the law for failing to act in these matters. Mchunu since responded by stating that of the 5 state capture matters that reached court, 4 ended in convictions and the 5th matter was withdrawn. He argues that this shows an 80% conviction rate and that pursuing grand-scale corruption is a top priority for the team of the Hawks and the National Prosecuting Authority. The ministers also rubbished any suggestion that officials have failed to carry out their duties properly. What say you? Drop us a voice note 072 562 3179.
Listen Up is News 24's sharp new podcast, where hosts Tim Cohen and Mark Barnes cut through the clutter with bold takes and unfiltered insight.
They're not fighting for the good of South Africa. And so this is degenerated into a series of tit-for-tat spats. How's that for a bit of poetry early in the morning?
Smart, punchy, and unapologetically real.
President Ramaphosa has explained why he did it, and the reason he did it was because he said that people weren't allowed to go to America, and then Andrew Whitfield did, and then there's a dispute about whether or not he asked.
Catch new episodes of Listen Up every Tuesday on News 24 or wherever you get your podcasts.
I know a lot about this. Not really.
Yeah,
but
there we go.
Here goes.
You can be the accused for a change. Yeah.
And finally, while you could argue we're staying with the theme of policing in this edition of The Lead, a viral TikTok video has been doing the rounds recently with a motorist at a roadblock alleging that traffic cops had been withholding his license until he paid a fine on the spot. Some expert debunking by our News 24 disinformation desk has found 2 simple factors that remain true. Firstly, officers cannot force you to pay a fine right there and then, even if mobile card machines are available on site. Secondly, they cannot take your license card away to force you to cough up. The whole thing sparked a critical conversation about what traffic officials may or may not do at roadblocks. Sure, they can check your credentials and check your vehicle's roadworthiness. Officials can also allow you to pay fines at roadblocks. Sometimes centers are put up with mobile card machines, should you want to, according to Johannesburg's Metro Police Department, for example. In short, they're lawful, but they're purely voluntary. However, if a court-issued warrant of arrest is out on your name, then don't expect to just drive off from said roadblock. I hope that's simple enough. Thanks, Andrew Thompson at our News 24 disinformation desk. From detailing the do's and don'ts at traffic roadblocks to the state of our South African police service as we know it, it's only Monday, what? And before you know it, we'll all blink and realize it's Friday again. We'd love to hear from you in this edition. You can welcome to send us all of your voice notes onto our official The Lead WhatsApp line. That's 072 562 3179. Also, to be in touch with all of our editions this week, follow and subscribe on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. My name's Graham Robenheimer, and so long as there's news, we'll have The Lead.